My talk today will give you a brief introduction into kind of the history and context of fair trade. Alex and I agreed to try and keep it fairly brief on our presentation so we could have plenty of time to do question and answer, which is always my favorite part of this kind of webinar. So to start us off, this is a bridge that I was faced with crossing in Honduras last month at the Las Capucas Cooperative in southwest Honduras. And you can see that there is one guardrail up and one guardrail down. What you might not be able to see in this slide is that the guardrail is made out of barbed wire, which is not that uncommon in Central America, Latin America, and the Caribbean, but makes for an interesting journey nonetheless. So the question here was this bridge safe to cross over the river? And I put this up first because I think it's a bit of a metaphor for fair trade, in that we're not exactly sure what's on the other side, but we know we need to get across. And we're not exactly sure how to do it, but we know we have to get across. So in this case, one intrepid local farmer went across the bridge, and the rest of us found another route across rocks and a bit of some perilous jumps across various things, but we managed to make it to the other side. And I think the other side of this is that part of fair trade is being innovative and creative, and using the tools that we have at hand to make sure that we get across to the other side. The flip side of that is, as fair trade has grown, sometimes it seems like it's promoted as kind of the miracle cure for poverty. And I think for me, and what I'll be talking about, is fair trade as a tool and a perspective. I've always seen it more as a doorway to walk through, and a journey to learn how to ask better questions, and hopefully to come up with better solutions in partnership with farmers, eaters, traders, all kinds of folks. Good picture anywhere that I've been able to find. This is Edna Ruth Byler, and she's credited really as kind of the early pioneer, founder of the modern fair trade movement. Back in the 1940s, she brought some crafts back from the Caribbean and started selling them through faith-based organizations, Mennonites in her case. And today, some people will know 10,000 Villages is really the direct descendant of her work. And so that was some 70 years ago that people have been doing organized, what we now call fair trade. It wasn't called fair trade back then. Moving along, skipping a few decades up to my history here. So those later became called alternative traders before fair trade, that name was coined. 40s, 50s, 60s were mostly faith-based organizations, mostly in Europe and in the United States, a little bit in Canada, a few other countries in Asia. They were small and outside of the mainstream marketplace, so they were selling primarily to churches, faith-based organizations, and most people in a supermarket or in a mainstream craft store of some kind would have never heard of this alternative trade. Right? And I think there are many other programs that really have the same values at heart. I think one of the most noted ones for me as an inspiration is Black Panthers doing free lunches and basing a whole program on the fact that people have the right to good food, good nutrition, no matter what their income level, and that they have the right to have healthy stores in their neighborhood that are owned locally. So I think you see there kind of the early building blocks of what now is fair trade and also direct trade. Both. Moving up into that period, in the 1980s, several of us from the food cooperative movement, working at the wholesale level, tried different ways to connect the cooperative distribution work with alternative production work, with social movements in the third world, with the politics of food. We found the co-ops not super receptive to that, and so we set up our own company to pursue exactly that. How could we live our values in a food company? And so we created this company, which is now Equal Exchange. The first year we had sales of $113,000. At this point, Equal Exchange has over 100 employees and is close to $50 million in sales. So it's been a steady progression. If you look at that as a percentage of the US food market, of course, or even just the coffee market, it's a drop in the bucket. And so what happened starting in Europe and then came to the United States was people developed certification seals. And the brilliance of the certification seal was that it took the sourcing values that the alternative traders like Equal Exchange had created, and it enabled us to take those values into the mainstream marketplace. So instead of going through faith-based organizations, very small companies with very small volume, this certification said anybody that plays by these rules and sources from these groups that we have verified meet our criteria can sell that product. So that opened up the market to much larger volumes of product. Right? So you could have very large companies, medium companies. People didn't have to devote their entire company to doing fair trade. Now, of course, that brought up a big controversy. The original folks, everything we did, whether it's 10,000 villages, Equal Exchange, those alternative traders, the whole reason to be in business was to create these new trade relationships. Now you have this certification, and you can have somebody, a Starbucks, Kraft Food, can do just a tiny bit of fair trade. Some see that as a beautiful thing that adds a lot more volume for farmers. Others say, well, they can still do business as usual, but get all of the halo, all of that beneficial image of doing fair trade. So there's a fair amount of controversy in the world of fair trade. We're left at this crossroads in the fair trade movement right now, where the US main certifier has actually pulled out of a global network of over 20 countries and said, we want to take fair trade to an even broader audience. So the certification had been really focused on small farmers primarily. They're saying all poor farmers, farm workers, people in co-ops, people unorganized, everybody should have access to fair trade. And it's created quite a controversy. Are we here to reform corporate capitalism and the corporate world, and so allowing them to do a 0.1%, 1% of their volume, what have you, is cool? Are we here to transform as the alternative traders saying we need a whole new model of business, whole new way to look at markets? Right now, both those things are existing under this umbrella called fair trade, and I would say it's become a very uneasy alliance. Everybody's using what we would say the same brand, fair trade, but with very different theories of how change happens and what the boundaries are, what's considered ethical. So it's a fascinating time in the world of fair trade, and I think in many ways we're just seeing the fruits of success, that it's grown to levels many of us could not have imagined 15, 20, 30 years ago. But we're facing this crossroads of where does it go? And what's the role of the small, pioneering, transformative folks creating new business models if they're saying they're doing the same thing, using the same term, fair trade, as large corporations who just have one line that they're calling fair trade. This is a fruit seller in Guatemala, in a small town in the Ixil Triangle in Guatemala. How do we connect people's food experience here in a small town in Guatemala to our food experience here, whether that's in the United States, Europe, Canada, or wherever you are on the other end of your phone call on this webinar? How do we create a connection so that we understand our food experience as directly connected to their food experience and life experience? And what responsibility do we have for ensuring that those folks that are growing those products have a reasonable standard of living? How do we hold our own life struggles relative to their life struggles? So for me, in that struggle, I think one of the last things I wanted to point out is this is one farmer, Don Isidro, from the Capucas Co-op again in Honduras. He's an amazing, charismatic person. And part of the idea of fair trade and direct trade is to help elevate farmers that are world-class farmers and to give them the tools, resources, and access to be everything that they can be. The one thing for me that I think Fairtrade has focused on that I'm curious about where it goes with direct trade is movement building. And part of the idea of Fairtrade certification and the way that it was established was to support not just co-ops and farmers, but movement building, so that those farmers, co-ops, and communities could be part of something bigger than themselves. And that to really create political change and economic change in their community requires also change at the regional level, at the country level, the international level. And so I think that's one of our challenges, is how do we get really good at the local level and supporting farmers like Don Isidro, and make sure at the same time that we're creating enough systemic change so that the next generation doesn't fall back and have to start all over again. So in closing, my last slide, these are some young kids in a small village in the Ishil Triangle in Guatemala again, and they are waiting for an event where they got their first ever public trash can for their village green. And we all went around, we had a whole educational session, we went around and picked up all the lollipop sticks. Was the #1 thing I picked up, plastic lollipop sticks. You never know where trash comes from. But for me, fair trade, direct trade, any ethical trade, we have to take into account how are we creating better life, better opportunity for the next generation and many generations to come.
I just had a question for you. If you could clarify for the audience what criteria the Fairtrade USA currently holds today to define what a fair trade relationship is. Could you help clarify that?
Yes, most people in fair trade, or most certifiers, have a fairly similar basic criteria that they're starting with, and then I'll try and point out where some of the differences lie. So the first one is direct long-term buying relationship, right? The second one, it was historically buying directly from small farmer cooperatives. Then many years ago, before Fairtrade USA, one of the German initiative took the lead, I would say, in adding plantations for tea, with the argument there weren't enough smallholders in tea to have a viable program. So it's one of the real debates in fair trade. Is it really focused on small farmers, or is it this broader program? Fairtrade USA now has a program called Fairtrade for All. They're trying to expand it to farm workers, unorganized workers. So in the small farmer world, people feel fair trade was really established, this kind of certification for small farmers, and they should have control over it. So direct trade with small farmers or with other accepted groups, depending on whose version of fair trade you have, paying what's considered a fair price, which in most commodities there's a floor price established, meaning no matter how low the world market goes, when you get below a certain level in fair trade, you have to pay that price.
And in cocoa, do you know what those numbers are?
I don't know the numbers.
I think the current fair trade floor, from what I know from Fairtrade USA, is $2,000 per metric ton is the floor price, and then the premium is $200
and
above.
Then there's an organic premium on top of
Right,
that.
and then there's a $200 organic premium, I believe, as well.
And so in that version of certified fair trade, there's usually a social premium that's paid also that has to go toward various accepted community building activities, schools, healthcare clinics, various women's programs. There's a number of different categories. The next one is making a long-term commitment to work with the supplier so that you're not buying one year and moving on to a different supplier in following years. And I think those are the basic criteria. That when it comes to the marketplace, then there's some differences amongst different certifications and different approaches about, for example, can you sell a product that has 1 or 2% of their ingredients as fair trade, can that be sold as a fair trade product? If so, how? So there are many debates about what are the standards in the marketplace.
You're talking about the percentage of a specific ingredient in a product that might be able to allow the product to be called
right.
fair
So
trade.
this is if you had, for example, hand lotion that was made with fair trade cocoa butter, that was 2% or 10% of the overall ingredient volume. Could you call that fair trade? And what would you use?
Fair trade hand lotion.
Seal, that sort of thing,
Right.
right? Or if you had a chocolate bar, they used fair trade cocoa, but not sugar, vanilla, or milk, or any other ingredient.
That's fair trade or not?
Could that be fair trade? So there's a lot of debate on those standards on the market end. On the production end, it's really the small farmer only or small farmer plus.
Plus plantation owner, etc.
Yeah, so there's more and more certifications. There used to be just the one, Transfer USA in the US, Transfer Canada in Canada. Like I say, in over 20 countries, there are different certifications. Now, there are some of the organic certifiers have gotten into fair trade certification. And we also have the small farmer cooperative movement in Latin America has launched their own seal called the SPP, the small producers symbol. And that's in response to these new initiatives that cut the farmers' control of certification out, such as Fairtrade USA. They launched their own label that's farmer controlled.
We were examining a lot of these ideas because we knew we wanted to start a socially responsible enterprise. We decided early on that we wanted to be an organic company, a certified organic company through USDA. And we wanted to be really proud of what we were producing, both from a quality standpoint and, of course, a social responsibility aspect. And we were actually very close to signing up with a fair trade model, but we realized and we discovered, very much out of necessity, that we needed to source certified organic cocoa beans for our process. And in doing that, we realized that, wow, we could get these really great certified organic cocoa beans, but they weren't fair trade. Or we could get these fair trade cocoa beans, but they were really low quality. Or we could get these fair trade certified organic cocoa beans and we just couldn't use them because they were so poor in quality. And so that's where we realized we had to go strike out on our own and go meet these producers, find the certified organic beans that we needed with the quality that we were looking for. And I think the reason that happened to us when we were just starting this company was that we were trying to do something a little bit different, and the people who were certified organic and certified fair trade knew they were already getting the premium, so they didn't really care about the quality because they knew they were going to get this premium price anyway. So they tended to be a little bit lower in quality. And then we kind of entered the industry at that standpoint. So direct trade is something that we heard about. We didn't start it. We didn't invent it. We didn't invent any of this. We just kind of found ourselves in this ecosystem. And direct trade was something that we learned about from the coffee companies. And the coffee companies such as Intelligentsia, Counterculture Coffee, and Stumptown Coffee Roasters in Portland, Oregon. These companies were all doing something that they called direct trade, or we heard horizontal trade for a little while. They called it different things in different places, but it was basically a way for companies to work directly with farmers to get a really high quality product. And this was all being done by really small, super specialty craft producers, craft coffee roasters. And it was happening in a small way in some other industries, food production industries as well. And I think it was really born out of this kind of broad food movement that started happening in the United States over the last couple decades, where people really just wanted to know more about where their food came from. And I think that was what triggered a lot of this craft production, craft industry happening, this cottage industry that eventually became quite a substantial marketplace, of which Taza is a humble participant. We we were part of that wave as an organization, and we very much related to a lot of the challenges that these organizations were having. So we saw Fairtrade from that perspective. We're a small new craft producer trying to get by, trying to make a really awesome high quality product, trying to do it the right way, make an organic certified product. And what we learned was that, well, we had to go out and find that product on our own. This is what the coffee roasters did, this is what we ended up having to do. So we went out and found that product. We spent a lot of money and time and energy really working to source the right stuff. And we flew to these origins. We started out going to Costa Rica and Panama, and we ended up going to the Dominican Republic, just networking, meeting people, talking to people, reaching out to producers, learning Spanish, and just trying to find a good quality cocoa bean that we could use for our very, very minimally processed chocolate that we make here at Taza Chocolate. And that led to us having to pay a lot of money for our ingredients. We made these direct relationships. We spent a lot of time and money and energy sourcing these beans, and we ended up paying a premium in the marketplace, first of all, just to gain access to the product. We were an unknown player. We were a risk to some of these producers. So we were like, okay, you know what, we'll pay you this premium if you work with us and make this high quality product that we need and can guarantee the quality and all that. Be certified organic. So we started paying a good deal of money for these beans, more than the Fairtrade premium at the time, and substantially more a lot of the times. Sometimes we were paying $500, $600, $700, $800, $1,000 over the market price for the beans that we were buying. So when we looked at the Fairtrade model, it didn't make much sense to us. We were like, okay, we're doing all this really direct work with producers. We want to tell this story to our customers, show them where their food comes from, have a certified organic product. Why would we pay some people in California for the privilege of using their label when we can tell such a compelling story on our own? Why would we pay them money that we can pay directly to the farmer, directly to the cooperative, or to the plantation owner, so that they can hire more employees, produce a better quality product, utilize in a way that's much more kind of in line with our model, which is socially responsible enterprise. So that's really why, as an organization, we ended up with this model, with the direct trade model, is because at the time the fair trade model didn't make sense to us. Now, much like Jonathan was saying about equal exchange, Taza Chocolate is not even a drop in the bucket in the chocolate industry. We are a tiny organization compared to the likes of Nestle, Mars, Hershey, these very large multinational corporations who are producing huge volumes of chocolate product. We're very small. This year we'll have sourced about 200 metric tons. In some plants, that's processed within the week. That's what we're going to use for this whole year. So that's something that, I think a big difference between the fair trade model and the direct trade model is the direct trade model is very much set up for the craft industry, for the specialty ingredient that is needed by the craft industry for really high quality stuff at a premium price. It doesn't necessarily apply to commodity grade product that might be used by a Nestle or a Hershey or a Mars. And I think this direct trade response to fair trade is very natural in that it's fulfilling a need that fair trade doesn't necessarily fulfill in a very reasonable way for a company like us. Fair trade, I think Jonathan clarified a little bit of this when he was describing the criteria, is designed really for fitting in with the commodity product purchasing that a larger company might do, even though I think it did start out of a specialty kind of realm. The actual program is designed to be fairly easy to apply and easy to understand by a large organization like Starbucks or Hershey or Mars, what have you. And they can pay their premium. They can say, okay, I need 200 tons of fair trade organic. Let's book it. And they can kind of wipe their hands clean of the situation to make that product for their customers. Whereas the direct trade model very much necessitates a much smaller, more craft-sized company that's endeavoring to tell a different story. So when we created, I'm just going to go through the slides here. when we created this model, we didn't really know what we were doing. So we contacted our friends down at Counterculture Coffee who had gone through and actually got their process third-party certified. So we decided to do that as well. We decided on 5 core principles, which you see here on this slide. And then we actually decided which claims we wanted to have third-party verified, which we have verified by Quality Certification Services in Florida, QCS. This is a paper audit. They don't fly down to the origin and visit and talk to our farmers or anything. They're actually auditing a paper trail that we provide for them. So we provide them with travel documentation, boarding passes to verify the first claim that we actually visit our cacao producers at least once per growing year. Claim 2, that we pay a premium of at least $500 per US ton above the New York International Commodities Exchange cocoa price, which we provide them with formal invoices and pro forma invoices and shipping documentation from the purchases that we make. And that we only source really high quality cacao. That premium is used to incentivize quality production. And that's verified by quality verification documents that we create here utilizing a cocoa bean cut test. But the spirit of the program is captured in the core principles. And this is something that we actually create a document that we have the producer group or the farmer sign every year that we visit them. And it states all the things that are listed here under the principles section. So this is the model that we created to create a long-term sustainable relationship with the growers that we work with. And we essentially have all that money go directly to them. We have no requirements that they spend that money in any particular way, and that's something that differs from Fairtrade. We spend a lot of time and energy on the ground, making sure that what they have going on is sustainable in their communities from a business standpoint as an organization. We don't build schools, we don't do any of that, but we do contribute by being a very good, loyal, and well-paying customer for their business. I'm just going to move on to the slides here. So we create a transparency report once a year, which you can find on our website at tazachocolate.com. In the About Us section, I think there's a Fairtrade page, or I'm sorry, a Direct Trade page, where we have our transparency reports published in PDF format. These are some slides from that document. This is me just this past February in the Alto Beni region of Bolivia, and that's the president of the CIAB cooperative. He's signing the document that I just mentioned. And we're going to move on to the next slide here. These are some cacao beans that we've cut tested. The ones in the top row are very well fermented and dry. The ones in the bottom row are slightly under fermented. And there's one of them in there that's really unfermented. Just so you see what commodity we're talking about here. This is one of the small farmer producers of the Lored Co-op down in the Dominican Republic, just outside of Nagua, delivering some of his wet beans to the cooperative. This is one of the plantation owners that we work with in the Dominican Republic, Finca Helvecia. In the middle is Joe Locandro, and that's his, to his right is Marco. He's the quality control person who manages the fermentery operation. Joe is originally from Brazil, and Marco's from Haiti. And we publish about all of these visits, and I write a paragraph about all of them each year when we go and visit with them to see how, what progress is being made on the ground, to talk about the relationship. This is Elva Zuaso, the quality control person that helps out with exporting from the CIAB cooperative in Bolivia. This is something I'm really proud of. This is a project that we have going on in Belize. This is Gabriel Pop. He's our general manager. We have a cocoa bean processing and exporting company in Belize that I co-founded, that Taza's been beginning to work with very directly. And then this is probably the nitty-gritty, the nuts and bolts of the report, where we actually publish the price the most recent price per ton that we paid to each of these organizations. So we're very transparent about what we do and how much each of these producer groups or producers is getting for their product, and about the volume of the relationship that we have with them. This is something that not everyone does. We don't have to do it. It's not necessarily part of our program, but it's something that we like to do as an organization so that we can continue to have a very meaningful dialogue about our trade relationships with our community and theirs. And then this is this is a great photograph from Belize where a number of our staff was able to travel down with me last year on Chocolate Week, which is something we try to expose as many people as possible to the cocoa growing regions, and we bring staff every year, and of course you can sign up to come along, and we do a whole Chocolate Week. It's something that you can check out on our website and sign up for. It's every March. This is Lucia, our senior shift leader, holding a cocoa seedling. This is in the Dominican Republic at the Red Cooperative. And here we have Kelly Silsby and Angel from the Red Cooperative. We had a bunch of them visit we flew them up actually, had them visit in conjunction with Root Capital, a great social finance organization. And they helped us fly up a bunch of producers from the Red Cooperative who visited us in the factory. This is them making chocolate with beans that they produced for us. So this is the kind of relationship we like to have. So that's where I'll leave it off and open up the floor for questions.